Hey y'all, this is Jeremiah, pastor at Centennial ARP. Thanks for tuning in for today's video devotional. Proverbs chapter 13, verses 20 and 21. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Disaster pursues sinners, but the righteous are rewarded with good. Now, remember a couple things. This is the book of Proverbs. In other words, these are Proverbs that we are reading. And it's not that they are not 100% true. It is that these are 100% revealers of a reality of how God desires us to move forward. In other words, what I'm saying is that when we read that disaster pursues sinners and that the righteous are rewarded with good, well, what about when the righteous are rewarded with bad? For instance, if you are an employee of some company that takes a hardline stance on some biblical precedent. I'll use an extreme one, right? Where they say that you must bow down before the CEO as if he were God and that you cannot bow down before any other gods, right? In other words, you think, what? Is this a Daniel moment for real? I can't do that. My righteousness isn't being rewarded, right? I don't understand. This isn't good. This is bad. As you perhaps would lose your job or something like that. Well, that's not the reality that's playing out here. Remember, as we read the Proverbs, that's a skin-deep feel. That's a world interpretation where we want to hear a proverb, a pithy proverb. We want to buy something from Books A Million or from the Amazon wish list, for a sweet gift for our mother or our father or something where you give it and you say, here's some pithy sayings that will really cheer you up in the morning as you drink your cup of joe or something like that. No, these Proverbs hold a depth of spiritual reality. And this depth of spiritual reality gets right down to the very gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so when we see that whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, we see that when we follow after God, we grow in God. We grow in spiritual maturity. We grow in holiness and in righteousness. But the companion of fools will suffer harm because we will look more foolish as we go after the foolish. If you make your company and your bedfellows with the fool, you will probably embody the practices of the fool. And so as we move forward seeking after God, there is an ordinary reality of a growth of righteousness, not to save us, but because God has picked us up and He has placed us on a path of righteousness for His name's sake, because He is a good God and a good Father to you, O follower of Jesus, for He has adopted you as a son or a daughter. Likewise, we see that disaster pursues sinners, but the righteous are rewarded with good. We should be unsurprised that if we speed, we get a ticket. Likewise, if we drive drunk, we get a ticket. That is the right consequence and the right way of things. When we get away with speeding, or worse, with other infractions, like, for instance, driving while impaired, it's not a good thing. Whew, I got away with it this time. That's terrible. And so what we see here is that disaster pursues sinners because you're always walking on the fine line of destruction. And so, of course, disaster follows. But the righteous are rewarded with good. When we pursue that right way that God has laid out for us, of course, we will see ordinarily a flow that allows us to breathe a breath of comfort in our own skin. Our conscience isn't always on radar mode, seeing who's looking at us and why. We're trying to remember what we've said and why, because so many pieces and parts of the puzzle are trying to be put in as we're trying to make sure our lives of deceit and sinfulness don't catch up to us in destruction. Of course, the righteous are rewarded with good because we breathe well as we follow after God. Doesn't mean that a righteous person, a follower of God, a person on the path of light is perfect. No, we are all sinners in need of saving grace from God, but there is a difference for the one whose conscience can be clean, as we know we pursue in a right way those good things that God has laid out because He's changed our heart from the inside out. That's the good news of Jesus, is being able to take a breath and recognizing the peace that we can have in our lives, and oh, how sweet the peace can be. In this world today, dear Christian, are you one whose anxiety level, whose stress level, whose worldly level is so high that your conscience is on radar mode as you're trying to make sure that all the pieces of that unrighteous life stick together and that you don't get caught? Or can you be one who moves away from those things, who, as the scriptures would tell us, puts to death those sins and moves into the light and breathes freely, knowing that God Himself is the one who has taken those sins away, who has allowed you to get on this path, and who has given you the right way forward? Today, consider these things and be blessed by God.